The Concordia glided silently through the void of deep space, its crystalline hull reflecting distant starlight like a drifting jewel in the dark. Commander Vexa stood on the observation deck, her 4 eyes fixed on the horizon of stars ahead. Centuries of Zaan exploration had mapped this region thoroughly, yet something felt different today. Something unseen but undeniable. When the call came from Senior Analyst Kai, there was an edge to his voice that made the entire bridge crew stiffen. "We are detecting an anomalous energy signature. It's massive," he said. Vexa floated quickly toward his station, her hover pads humming softly beneath her as she leaned in to inspect the data. The readings made no sense. The power levels being picked up were on the scale of a small star, yet somehow it was contained and controlled. She asked for the origin, her voice calm but edged with curiosity. Kai's appendages danced over the interface, displaying the analysis. "It's not matching anything in our databases," he said, "and it's moving deliberately." Vexa felt a shiver of unease pass through her. The implications of encountering a previously unknown power of this magnitude were profound across the bridge. The atmosphere turned tense as the crew processed the situation. "Show me," she ordered, and the viewport zoomed in on the source of the signal. What appeared on screen was unlike any ship the Zaan had ever seen. Instead of smooth, crystalline curves, it was a vessel of brutal angles and layered armor, easily twice the length of the Concordia. It bristled with weapon placements and radiated a power signature that made no logical sense by the first light. Someone whispered, "Those aren't energy projectors. They're kinetic weapons." Vexa's scientific training kicked in instantly. Kinetic weapons had been considered obsolete for thousands of years, their inefficiency and primitiveness rendering them relics of the past. Yet here they were on a ship with more raw energy than anything she had ever encountered. Suddenly, Kai spoke again. "We are being scanned," he said. "Their sensors are astonishingly advanced. They are mapping our vessel on a molecular level." Before Vexa could respond, a communication request blinked onto their console. The unknown vessel was reaching out, wanting to talk. "Accept the transmission," she said, straightening her posture. First contact protocols drilled into her. Since cadet training came into focus, strength through dignity, respect through presence. The holographic display activated, and in the center of the bridge, a new figure appeared. It was an alien with only 2 eyes and peculiar skin pigmentation. It wore a formal uniform marked with symbols of rank. "I am Captain Sarah Chen of the United Earth Federation vessel Hyperion." The figure said, "We come in peace." Vexa's mind reeled at the calm confidence in the human's voice. "I am Commander Vexa of the Zaan Confederation vessel Concordia. We too come in peace." She responded, her mandibles clicking slightly as she carefully chose her words. "Your vessel," she began hesitantly. "It is unlike anything we've encountered." Chen smiled, a gesture the database interpreted as friendly. "The Hyperion is our latest deep space battleship. We've learned that exploration requires preparedness, both for peace and for defense." Vexa tilted her head. "Battleship." Her translator struggled with the term. "Your ship combines exploration and combat." Of course, Chen replied, "Space is unpredictable. We prefer to be ready for both." "Would you like to take a closer look?" The offer was unexpected. Nearly all spacefaring species guarded their military assets closely, yet this human was offering a tour openly. "We would be honored," Vexa said, her curiosity outweighing caution, "though I must admit, your technological capabilities raise many questions. The energy output alone." Chen's expression brightened. "You must have noticed the fusion drive, just one of many advances humanity has made. We tend to push boundaries." Vexa glanced around at her crew. Their faces mirrored her own thoughts. Something about this ship and its people was going to change everything. She felt it deeply. The universe had just become far more interesting than it had ever been before as the matter transfer completed and the Zan delegation materialized inside the receiving bay of the Hyperion commander. Vexa took her first real look at the interior of a human battleship and was immediately struck by how different everything felt compared to her own vessel, where the Concordia was a masterpiece of serenity, elegance, and minimalist design. The Hyperion pulsed with motion energy and a kind of grounded practicality that seemed chaotic at first glance, but revealed layers of intention beneath every step. Human crew members moved with purpose, down functional corridors, walls lined with utility panels and data ports. Machines hummed in harmony and voices echoed commands with clear authority. Captain Sarah Chen greeted them personally. Flanked by her senior officers, her tone was warm, her stance confident. "Welcome aboard the Hyperion," she said. "I hope our ship proves interesting, even if it seems a bit unconventional to you." Vexa studied her surroundings and the crew, carefully noting how efficiently they moved, how relaxed yet alert they seemed. It was as if they lived in a constant state of readiness without losing their composure. "Your artificial gravity is impressive," remarked Chief Engineer Zix, his sensor tendrils flicking curiously. "I detect no crystal matrices, no quantum stabilizers." "How is it?" maintained Lieutenant Commander Marcus Rodriguez. Hyperion's chief engineer offered a grin. "We use rotating habitat sections combined with electromagnetic field generators. Simple, reliable, and easy to fix under fire." Vexa and her team exchanged glances. They had never even considered such an approach. Their systems consumed tremendous energy and required constant recalibration. This was a fundamentally different way of thinking, one that prioritized resilience and adaptability over perfection. As the tour continued, the surprises came rapidly. The humans had turned once theoretical concepts into practical applications. Their point defense systems ran predictive AI that could analyze and neutralize threats faster than any organic mind. Their armor was not just protection, but a reactive material, able to adapt its molecular configuration based on the nature of an attack. Their corridors were reinforced, their bulkheads multi-purpose, their internal systems modular, every design choice focused on function without sacrificing durability. Then Captain Chen brought them to a wide chamber, filled with towering columns of green stretching from floor to ceiling. "This is our hydroponics bay," she explained. Vexa's eyes widened in disbelief. "You grow your own food on board," naturally said Chen. "Food synthesizers are fine for emergency rations, but nothing boosts crew morale like fresh vegetables. Plus, the plants recycle oxygen and help stabilize ship atmosphere." Vexa observed the lush rows of crops, noting the variety of species and the automated irrigation systems. It was a small ecosystem engineered within metal walls, and it worked harmoniously as if it belonged there. This idea of integrating nature into machinery was alien yet elegant. Before she could comment, alarms echoed through the corridor, red lights flashing across panels and comm stations. Captain Chen's expression shifted instantly from welcoming host to focused commander. "Bridge report." She snapped. A voice answered from the comm channel. "Captain, we're detecting a gravitational anomaly 2 light minutes from our position. Energy signature suggests it's a natural phenomenon, but it's destabilizing a nearby mining outpost." Vexa braced herself, expecting the human crew to panic or scramble, but instead they moved with fluid coordination. Science Officer Wong reported a quantum filament cascade, likely caused by exotic particle mining destabilizing local space-time. "Can we stabilize it?" Chen asked, moving swiftly to her command chair. "Conventional methods would take too long." Wong replied, "We might be able to create a counter-resonance using our weapon systems." "Do it," Chen ordered. "Divert power from the main fusion core. Rodriguez engage. Tactical recalibrate our strike platforms. Vexa watched in stunned silence as the Hyperion transformed from peaceful vessel to an instrument of intervention, not through destruction but through control. Instead of launching attacks, the weapon systems fired probes that anchored gravitational tethers, forming a lattice around the anomaly. Then energy beams calibrated with precision that could rival surgical tools pulsed in harmony, striking the vortex in rapid bursts. Space shimmered, twisted, and then slowly settled, collapsing the anomaly back into stability. Cheers erupted across the human bridge, but Vexa stood quietly, processing everything she had witnessed. The same weapons capable of devastation were now used to preserve life, to stabilize regions of space too dangerous for others to navigate. This was not merely a warship, it was a platform for survival, a beacon of control amidst cosmic chaos. She turned to Chen, her voice low but filled with awe. "Your ship, your people, you've turned weapons into tools of salvation." Chen looked at her and gave a slight nod. "We've learned that adaptability is more powerful than brute force. The best solutions come when you stop looking at problems like they always have." "One answer. Would you like to see our medical bay?" she asked. "There are a few more innovations I think you might find interesting." As they exited the bridge, Vexa glanced back at the human crew, already returning to their routines, as if solving space-time crises was just another day's work, and perhaps for them it was. She realized then that what truly set humans apart was not just their technology or strength, but the way they met the extraordinary with a calm, unwavering practicality, the kind that turned impossibility into routine and made the impossible feel manageable. For the first time since they launched the Concordia, Vexa felt she had seen something entirely new, something that would shift the way her people understood the universe forever. The moment the gravitational anomaly had been stabilized and the mining outpost declared safe, Commander Vexa found herself walking beside Captain Chen through one of the Hyperion's secondary corridors, still absorbing everything she had witnessed, the way the human crew had repurposed weapon systems into precision tools of spatial correction was beyond anything the Zan had ever attempted or even imagined for her. People energy projection had always meant offense or, at best, defense. But here was a ship designed not just to dominate, but to adapt, to transform from a war machine into a vessel of salvation without hesitation or delay. As they continued their walk, Chen spoke casually about the philosophy behind their design choices, how redundancy and modularity allowed their systems to serve multiple purposes, how adaptability was not just a convenience but a necessity in space. Vexa nodded, but her thoughts were racing when they arrived at the Hyperion's medical bay. Her sense of astonishment only deepened. The facility was large, bright, and filled with a mix of human and robotic staff, all operating in seamless coordination. Holographic diagnostics floated above patients, suspended in medical fields. Equipment moved on automated rails, and the entire room felt alive with quiet efficiency. "We've invested a lot into medical automation," Chen explained, "not just for battle injuries, but for long-term deep space health. We've even started integrating predictive care systems that monitor subtle biometrics to catch illnesses before they happen." Vexa examined a pod where a patient lay asleep, surrounded by a cloud of microscopic drones repairing tissue on a cellular level. She saw another chamber where a three-dimensional model of a patient's nervous system was being edited by a specialist who moved their hands through augmented reality fields, guiding targeted electrical impulses with astonishing precision. "And here," Chen said, pointing toward a cluster of glowing blue crystals that hummed with power, "is where we tried to integrate some of the crystal resonance principles your species is famous for. Your understanding of quantum harmonics allowed us to stabilize certain high-energy medical fields, with far less power drain and better long-term results. Vexa's gaze flickered between the humans and the adapted, technology a sudden and overwhelming realization dawning within her. This was not a species that only took or conquered. This was a species that observed, absorbed, and built upon what they encountered, the integration of other civilizations. Knowledge was not exploitation, it was evolution, and the humans were proving to be the most rapidly evolving civilization she had ever encountered. But before she could speak again, the ship-wide alert tone sounded once more, and this time, the tension in the air was sharper. Captain Chen excused herself, and Vexa followed close behind. They returned to the bridge where a new situation was unfolding. A transmission from the Zan High Council shimmered into view, announcing a full-scale invasion from the Kashi, a brutal, warlike species known for their raids. But never before had they dared to launch a coordinated attack on this scale. 37 capital ships supported by multiple cruisers and destroyers had breached the outer defense line, demanding immediate surrender from all Zan colonies in the sector. The Council's voice trembled with urgency and fear. Their energy weapons had proven useless against the new adaptive shielding technology the Kashi now possessed. Chen remained silent for a moment, then leaned forward, calm but alert. Are these the same Kashi that have been raiding isolated outposts? Yes, the Council confirmed, but clearly they've escalated their efforts. Chen's demeanor shifted, her eyes focused, her posture straight. If I may, she said, would your Council be open to a joint response operation? The Hyperion is not just a battleship, it is also a test platform for next-generation defense technologies. We have systems that could bypass the Kashi's new shields. If we act quickly, the Council fell into silence, then chaos, as multiple voices overlapped, questioning the wisdom and risk of cooperating militarily with a newly contacted species. Chen raised her hand respectfully but firmly. You asked what humanity wants in return. The answer is simple. Knowledge exchange. Your advancements in crystal matrices could dramatically improve our medical applications. In return, we offer a solution to your immediate problem and a lasting alliance. Vexa watched her Council deliberate, their faces distorted by interference. But the growing fear was evident. They had no time to waste, and few options. The Kashi were ruthless and unyielding, and here was an ally not asking for control or resources, but proposing collaboration. The Council agreed, and within hours, the Hyperion was repositioned near the outer rim, flanking the Zan defensive line. Vexa stood at the edge of the human bridge, now serving as official liaison, and observed the human crew with a mix of fascination and something nearing admiration. Despite the clear threat, the atmosphere aboard the Hyperion was not tense. It was charged with focus, but also something else. Excitement. They are not afraid. She thought they are ready. They are used to facing the unknown. With confidence, your crew does not appear concerned about the odds. Vexa commented. Chen glanced at her while reviewing tactical readouts. Humanity has a long history of being outnumbered and still coming out on top. Superior numbers are not the same as superior strategy, and the Kashi have made a critical mistake. They believe they know the rules of engagement, and they do not. Vexa nodded slowly, watching as Operation Trojan Horse was launched. Drone swarms cloaked in advanced electronic camouflage began dispersing across the projected arrival coordinates. Chen stood silently, waiting, her command team poised and alert. When the Kashi fleet emerged from faster-than-light travel, it was exactly where she had predicted. The lead ship immediately issued demands for surrender, broadcasting across all frequencies. Chen responded with something unexpected. She opened a channel to the entire enemy fleet, introducing herself as Captain of the Hyperion, acknowledging their shield technology, and then delivering her final message. Sometimes the bait is also the hook. Vexa barely had time to process the words. before the Hyperion's drones revealed themselves, attaching to enemy hulls and creating localized disruption fields that collapsed their shields simultaneously. The Hyperion altered its structure, revealing concealed weapon systems, but instead of firing to destroy it, began generating gravitational distortions, trapping the enemy fleet in a carefully calibrated spatial web. And just like that, the Kashi, who had come to dominate, found themselves contained, helpless, caught in a trap they never saw coming. And for the first time in her life, Vexa understood that the greatest strength of humanity was not in their firepower, but in their willingness to see war as a problem to be solved, not a battle to be won. As the Kashi fleet hung suspended in the gravitational web woven by the Hyperion's weapons, the bridge of the human vessel remained calm, yet alert. Commander Vexa stood behind Captain Chen, watching closely as the tactical display updated in real time. Multiple Kashi vessels were spiking with internal energy surges, an indication that they were attempting to overload their cores and detonate in a last act of defiance. If those ships exploded, the chain reaction could tear through this entire sector, devastating not only the human vessel but nearby Zan colonies as well. Vexa turned toward Chen, her voice urgent. "If they self-destruct, we will lose everything, including your ship." Chen nodded slowly, but her tone remained steady. "They're not going to detonate because we're going to give them a choice." Vexa blinked, caught off guard by the statement. "Surrender?" she asked incredulously. The Kashi were infamous for their fanaticism. They had never backed down from a fight and never accepted defeat. Even when death was the only outcome, Chen's gaze stayed fixed on the central screen. "Sometimes the best way to win a fight is to change the fight itself," she said calmly. She then instructed her communications officer to open a channel to the Kashi flagship. "This is Captain Sarah Chen of the Hyperion," she announced. "Your shields are gone. Your engines are neutralized and your command structure is vulnerable." The voice that responded was sharp and defiant. "We do not fear death. Human death is not what you should fear," Chen answered without hesitation, her voice steady and cool. "Right now, our systems are infiltrating your internal networks, but not your weapons or your engines. We're targeting your command protocols." Vexa watched the Kashi fleet on the tactical map as chaos rippled through their ranks. Confused movements, erratic power shifts, and sudden communication silences overtook the once disciplined formation. It became clear what Chen had meant. Their rigid military hierarchy, which relied on centralized control and perfect obedience, had become their greatest vulnerability. By disrupting that chain of command, the Hyperion had turned their order into disorder, you see, Chen said as her voice carried across the Kashi fleet. "We've studied your raids. We know your structure depends on absolute top-down authority. But what happens when each ship starts receiving conflicting orders from what appears to be different commanders? What happens when obedience no longer aligns with survival?" Within moments, some Kashi ships began powering down weapons. Others drifted without direction. A few even began signaling surrender or retreat. Impressive, Vexa whispered, unable to hide the awe in her voice. "You've turned their strength into their weakness." Chen nodded. "Humans learned a long time ago that strict hierarchies are brittle. They don't bend, they break. We prefer flexibility, we train for improvisation, and we build systems that adapt to change." The second phase of the operation began as the Hyperion's drone swarms activated new protocols extending filaments that interfaced directly with the Kashi vessels. Vexa leaned forward, curious how such a connection was possible. The Kashi were known for isolated systems, intentionally designed to be inaccessible. Chen anticipated the question, or maybe you just assumed they were, she said lightly, while the Kashi were busy building stronger shields. "We were building tools to bridge technological gaps. Those drones aren't just surveillance. Their universal machine language translators within minutes. Entire systems aboard the Kashi fleet began to shut down, not due to force but confusion. Their ships could no longer coordinate. Engines, navigation, or targeting the battle didn't end in a hail of fire, but in silence and indecision. The Kashi command structure crumbled, and what remained was a fleet adrift. Captains faced with the terrifying burden of making their own choices. Many chose surrender, especially when Chen offered them an alternative, not just mercy but opportunity. Hours later, as Zan ships arrived to take custody of the disabled vessels, Vexa stood once more in the Hyperion's observation lounge. The stars outside unchanged, but everything else felt different. She looked toward Chen, who stood at the transparent viewport watching the drifting ships. "Your species had the power to destroy them all. Vexa said you could have made them martyrs." Chen's voice was quiet but firm, and that would have led to another war. More fear, more resistance, more lives lost. Instead, we opened a door, gave them something they didn't expect. We gave them the chance to think for themselves. Vexa turned the thought over slowly. "You planned this, didn't you, even before our council contacted you?" Chen smiled. "Didn't know the details, but we've learned to prepare for different outcomes. Being underestimated has taught humanity to always be ready to prove ourselves. And sometimes the best proof is not in force, but in restraint." Vexa nodded, feeling a weight lift from her thoughts. This wasn't just about military victory. This was about transformation. The Hyperion had redefined what it meant to win, by creating space for dialogue, by showing strength through control and compassion. Chen looked over her shoulder. "Speaking of next steps, we've been detecting something unusual in this sector long before the Kashi moved in, and I believe it's something that could interest both our people." She tapped a control and brought up a star map, highlighting points of distorted space-time aligned in a pattern too precise to be natural gates, ancient gates. She said that might be waking up again. Vexa narrowed her eyes, her scientific mind immediately seeing the patterns, understanding the potential. The idea of something older than either of their civilizations, something powerful enough to shape the fate of entire galaxies. It was staggering, but even more staggering was the idea that they might explore it together with the Kashi Reeling and the Zan, now allies with Earth. A new possibility was emerging, not of conquest, but of joint discovery. Chen watched her reaction quietly, then said, "We built the Hyperion, not just to survive battles, but to reach for what lies beyond, because sometimes what starts as conflict becomes cooperation, and what begins in war ends in understanding and perhaps even in peace." Vexa felt something shift in her, the beginning of trust and maybe the start of something greater than either species could have imagined alone. A future shaped not by domination but by shared purpose and the courage to change the rules of the game. The diplomatic chamber aboard the Hyperion had been designed for calm discussion, cultural exchange, and cooperative planning, but now it pulsed with urgency and strategic focus as the holographic transmission from the Zan High Council flickered between Commander Vexa and Captain Chen. The message was grim. The Kashi fleet had not only breached the Outer Rim defenses, but had begun issuing demands for the unconditional surrender of all Zan colonies in the contested sector. Vexa's primary and secondary hearts beat faster while her fingers twitched slightly in controlled anxiety. 37 capital ships supported by dozens of cruisers and strike craft armed with new, adaptive shielding that rendered traditional Zan energy weapons ineffective. It was not a raid, it was an invasion. Chen, who had been listening without interruption, finally leaned forward. Her expression sharpened as she entered what Vexa now recognized as her tactical mindset. She confirmed the fleet's composition and its history of avoiding human space, then asked a simple but pointed question. "They've never encountered a human ship before, correct?" The council leader Mick responded, "Yes, they Intentionally steer clear of our sectors. Chen nodded. Good. Then we still have the advantage. The statement sent ripples of confusion through the room. What advantage could a single human vessel possibly hold against such overwhelming numbers? Chen turned to face the council, fully proposing what few in the room would dare suggest: a joint operation. The Hyperion was not just a battleship, it was a testbed for next-generation systems, specifically designed for unconventional threats. Kinetic projectiles, electromagnetic pulses, graviton distortion arrays, systems that didn't rely on energy weaponry alone, while the Kashi were busy building defenses against known Zan tactics. Humanity had been preparing for unknown variables. Chen offered the possibility to combine forces to outmaneuver the enemy by using tactics and technologies. They were unprepared for some. On the council balked at the idea of military collaboration with a newly encountered species. It was unprecedented, risky, and potentially disastrous. What exactly do you want in return? One of the members asked. Chen replied without hesitation, knowledge exchange. Your understanding of crystal matrix systems could accelerate our own medical and quantum applications, and we've found that making allies tends to lead to fewer future conflicts. Vexa watched her carefully and sensed a deeper layer. Beneath the calm confidence, humanity had not just been waiting. They had been preparing. This wasn't desperation. This was foresight. After debate and analysis, the Zan Council agreed. And within hours, the Hyperion repositioned itself alongside the Zan defense fleet. Vexa was now officially assigned as liaison to observe and assist with the human strategy on the bridge of the Hyperion. She stood behind Chen, watching the humans operate under pressure with a combination of precision and what could only be described as eager resolve. These were people about to face a technologically superior enemy, and they seemed not just calm but almost excited. Your people do not seem concerned. Vexa observed. Chen didn't look away from the tactical display. Humans have a long history of being underestimated. We've survived because we learned how to turn every disadvantage into a pivot point. The Kashi have fallen into the oldest trap in warfare. They think they understand all the rules, but they haven't met us yet. Then Chen turned to her tactical officer and gave the command to initiate Operation Trojan Horse. The room darkened slightly as the command staff moved into final readiness. Dozens of cloaked drones launched ahead of the Hyperion, dispersing across the predicted emergence zone of the Kashi fleet. Each drone carried advanced electronic warfare suites and machine language interfaces, not just weapons, but infiltrators. Chen remained poised, watching the map without a flicker of doubt. Exactly as predicted, the Kashi fleet emerged from faster-than-light travel. Dark, angular vessels bristling with confidence. The lead ship immediately transmitted an ultimatum demanding surrender. Chen instead opened a channel to the entire enemy formation. This is Captain Sarah Chen of the United Earth Federation vessel Hyperion. She began. We have studied your tactics. We know your shields are adapted to deflect Zan energy beams. They are effective, but incomplete. She paused for effect, and when she resumed, her voice was cold and deliberate. Sometimes the bait is also the hook. The signal ended, and at that precise moment, the Hyperion's cloaked drones revealed themselves, activating localized disruption fields that collapsed the energy shielding of the Kashi ships. The Hyperion's hull shifted, plates retracting and revealing hidden emitters, but instead of firing traditional weapons, it projected gravitational distortions, weaving a spatial net that froze the Kashi fleet in 3 dimensions. Engines sputtered, systems flickered. The Kashi were caught, immobilized, but not yet defeated. Captain Chen gave no command to attack. Instead, she waited, watching how the enemy would respond, and as expected, the Kashi began to initiate core overload protocols, aiming to self-destruct rather than be captured before Vexa could speak. Chen cut in. They won't blow themselves up, not yet, because we're about to change the nature of the fight. She then opened a direct transmission to the Kashi flagship, warning them that her systems were not disabling their weapons, but instead targeting their command protocols, and that their entire fleet structure depended on centralized orders. Suddenly, the Kashi ships began receiving contradictory instructions, their internal communications flooded with conflicting signals. The result was chaos. Some ships attempted to flee. Others went silent. Others began to power down as their systems locked up. The once disciplined formation disintegrated. In real time, then Phase 2 of the operation began. The drones extended filaments that connected to Kashi hulls and began interfacing with their systems. Vexa was stunned. "How are you accessing closed networks?" she asked. Chen glanced over and replied, "Or did they just assume they were closed? Our drones don't hack, they translate. We created machine language interfaces that can adapt across systems once connected." The ships began failing entirely without damage, without loss of life one by one. The enemy surrendered. Vexa stared at the scene. Not a single shot fired, yet an entire fleet was now neutralized. The battle had been won not through overwhelming force, but by a shift in perception and application, a change in rules that only humanity seemed capable of embracing. In that moment, Vexa understood the real nature of the Hyperion. It wasn't just a warship, it was a proving ground for ideas. And it had just demonstrated a new way to fight, not through destruction, but through disruption, control, and precision. The Kashi had underestimated their enemy, and now they had no choice but to reconsider everything they thought they knew about humanity and about war itself. The last of the Kashi ships drifted in the silence of defeat. Commander Vexa stood near the edge of the Hyperion's observation deck, her gaze fixed on the stars that now shimmered with a new meaning. What had begun as a hostile confrontation had transformed into something entirely unexpected around her. The crew of the Hyperion moved with purpose, but without celebration. They performed post-engagement. Protocols ran diagnostics, secured their systems, and checked for lingering threats. But there was no cheering, no declaration of triumph, because to them, this was not a moment of conquest. It was a moment of transition. Captain Chen approached her, expression calm and unreadable as always. "Your people could have destroyed them," Vexa said softly, "and no one would have questioned it. The damage they caused, the lives they ended. Many believed retribution was the only answer we could have." Chen agreed, her voice quiet but firm. "But that would have only created martyrs and fueled their myths of resistance. We've learned that sometimes the best way to win is not by defeating an enemy, but by changing the conditions that made them one." Vexa considered that, slowly turning the thought over in her mind. This was not just strategy, it was philosophy, a guiding principle that allowed humanity to act with strength and mercy in equal measure. She looked at Chen and asked directly, "You planned this, didn't you? Even before our council called for help?" Chen gave a small smile. "We didn't know when or where something like this would happen, but we always prepare for multiple outcomes, and we had already studied the Kashi long before they moved on your border. They had been probing sectors close to ours, skirmishing with other species. We learned their structure, their psychology, their systems. We just waited for the moment when we could make a real difference." Vexa turned back to the viewport, watching the captured ships slowly come under Zan custody. Yet something was different now. Some of those ships had begun transmitting not in defiance but in cooperation, fragments of independent command signals, requesting coordination rather than refusing it. "Your decision to offer surrender instead of destruction, it changed them," she said. "Not all," Chen replied, "but some. And that's all we need, a few, to see something different. A new path. The rest will follow or fade away." Vexa's eyes narrowed. "What if they regroup? What if they lie in wait and strike again? Then we'll be ready," Chen answered simply. but we won't give up the chance to make allies from enemies. That's the kind of risk humanity is willing to take. We believe trust must be extended before it's earned, otherwise nothing changes. The two women stood in silence for a moment before Chen shifted the topic. There's something else, something we didn't tell the council during our debrief. We weren't in this sector by accident. We had already detected anomalous space-time distortions long before the Kashi arrived, and we think they may be related to something far older than any of our species. Intrigued, Vexa followed her back to the Hyperion Strategy Center, where a star map flickered to life, displaying a series of glowing points stretching across distant regions of uncharted space. These are gate signatures, Chen said, highlighting several points. We believe they were built by a precursor civilization dormant for millennia, but recently we detected pattern shifts, indicating activation. Vexa stepped closer, analyzing the data, her mind racing. These patterns were too regular to be natural. The distortions aligned in a structure consistent with networked travel. Ancient jump gates long theorized but never confirmed. The implications were staggering. This is why you were here. Vexa said. You weren't patrolling, you were investigating. Chen nodded. We suspected something was stirring, and the Kashi moving in confirmed it. They were after control of this sector, not for resources or territory, but because they too detected something. Waking up, we believe these gates connect more than just stars, maybe even galaxies, and we want to understand them, but we can't do it alone. Vexa felt a chill of realization, not from fear, but from possibility. The Hyperion's technology, the Zan's crystal harmonics, the Kashi's deep space navigation experience, what once divided them now held the potential to unite them. She looked at Chen seriously. You intend to form a joint mission, don't you? Yes, Chen said. Humanity is prepared to modify the Hyperion into a vessel suited for this task, combining our technologies and expertise, and crewed by representatives from each of our peoples. We'll explore the unknown together. Vexa was silent for a moment, then said, Do you really believe such unity is possible after everything that has happened? Chen turned to her fully. I don't just believe it, I know it. I've seen it in how our teams collaborated under pressure, in how some Kashi captains chose reason over destruction, and in how you're standing here beside me asking not why, but how Vexa considered the truth of those words deeply. The mission ahead would be dangerous, uncertain and unprecedented, but it could also be the beginning of something new. Not a fragile truce, but a shared future. And perhaps that was what set humanity apart. Not their weapons or ships or even their adaptability, but their ability to see paths forward where others saw walls, to see value in connection over domination, and to act with strength, not to crush, but to lift. As she looked at the glowing trail of gate signatures blinking across the void, Vexa whispered, Perhaps this is what we were all meant for, not to conquer the stars, but to understand them together. And somewhere in the depths of space, one of the ancient gates pulsed faintly with light, as if answering her thought, as if waiting to be opened not by one species, but by many, united by purpose, shaped by conflict, and strengthened by the choice to build rather than break. The Hyperion's conference room was unlike anything Commander Vexa had ever experienced, filled not only with humans and Zan officials, but also with former Kashi captains and Sethan Council members, connected via holographic projection. The atmosphere buzzed with tension, curiosity, and cautious optimism as Captain Chen stood before the group, ready to unveil the true reason behind their presence in the contested sector. 3 months ago, Chen began. Our long-range sensors detected a pattern of space-time distortions, too regular to be natural at first. We thought it might be a malfunction, but the more we studied it, the more we realized these signatures aligned with theoretical models of precursor gate structures. Vexa leaned forward, eyes narrowing as the star map zoomed in on a distant region. The distortions were unmistakably artificial, and now more active than they had ever been in recorded history. "If these are gates," she said, "then someone is either waking them up or has already started using them." "Exactly," Chen replied, "and we believe they form a network not just across this galaxy, but possibly linking to others. If we can activate and stabilize even one of them, it could redefine everything we know about deep space travel, navigation, and contact with unknown civilizations." A murmur ran through the room. The potential was staggering and terrifying. All at once, a former Kashi captain named Dren spoke up. "This is why our high command was trying to seize control of the region. We didn't fully understand what the signals meant, but we knew they mattered. They tried to control the gates." Before anyone else could, Chen turned to him calmly. "And this is why the Hyperion was really here. We weren't just patrolling, we were preparing for a discovery mission. And now that all of us are aware of it, we have the opportunity to do something that's never been done before." Vexa looked at the hybrid data readouts floating in midair, the fusion of human analytics, Zan harmonic resonance patterns, and Kashi navigation overlays forming a picture none of them could have built alone. She spoke carefully. "Are you suggesting a joint expedition, a multi-species crew, exploring gates built by a civilization older than any of ours?" Chen nodded firmly. "I'm not just suggesting it, I'm proposing it. We modify the Hyperion using Zan crystal matrix technology, integrate Kashi sensor systems, and build a team from all three of our peoples to go through the gate together. No one speaks. First, for all of us, we speak as one." A wave of conversation swept through the room. Debates began immediately. But what struck Vexa was the tone. Even the disagreements were framed around how to make it work. Not whether it should happen. There was no posturing, no threats. Only focused discussion and a shared drive to reach beyond their limits. Hours later, after dozens of revisions and agreements, Vexa found herself once again beside Chen in the quiet of the observation deck, where stars painted the void with silent brilliance. "Was this your plan from the beginning?" Vexa asked. "To unite us through discovery instead of conflict?" Chen laughed softly. "Not exactly. I didn't know how it would unfold, but I believed something would force us to face ourselves and each other. And when that moment came, I wanted us to be ready." Vexa looked out at the distant pulse of the first gate. Faint but steady humanity always speaks about being prepared. Chen smiled. "That's because the universe doesn't wait for us to catch up. It rewards those who are willing to leap." Vexa studied her friend's face, seeing not the cold calculation she once suspected, but the sincere resolve of someone who had chosen hope over dominance, who had seen enemies and chosen to see potential instead of threat. The first of the modified probes launched, then its hull gleaming with a mix of human alloys, Zan crystalline structures, and Kashi telemetry. It was not elegant by traditional standards, but to Vexa it was beautiful. A symbol not just of cooperation, but of synthesis. She watched it approach the gate systems, flaring gently as ancient mechanisms responded to the presence of something new. "The energy readings are stable," Chen said quietly. "The gate is reacting like it's waking up." Vexa took a deep breath and whispered, "When we first saw your ship, we thought we were discovering a new species. Instead, we found something more valuable, a future one we couldn't reach alone." Chen turned her eyes, reflecting the light from the active gate, and that future commander is only just beginning to unfold together. They watched as the gate shimmered, then slowly began to open, and in that moment all doubts gave way to purpose. Three civilizations born of different stars, once separated by fear and misunderstanding, now stood ready to take their next step, not in isolation but side by side, towards something none of them could have ever reached on their own. As the probe crossed the event threshold of the ancient gate, its sensors feeding back real-time telemetry. The entire Hyperion command deck fell into a hushed silence. Commander Vexa stood alongside Captain Chen and representatives from both the Kashi and Sethan councils, watching as data poured in, revealing spatial coordinates that extended far beyond their known charts. The gate did not simply lead to another star system, it led to an entirely uncharted sector, filled with gravitational signatures, stellar phenomena, and what appeared to be dormant structures, possibly more gates, possibly something else entirely. The possibilities ignited excitement and caution in equal measure. The Hyperion would be the first vessel to attempt a crude journey through one of these ancient constructs, a ship built not by one species but by many, forged from conflict and reforged in cooperation. A true hybrid of knowledge, engineering, and purpose. Final preparations began without delay. Engineers installed the last crystal harmonics needed to stabilize long-range subspace communications, while Kashi technicians calibrated the advanced navigation array, drawing from their generations of experience traversing unstable regions of space. Chen addressed the crew and delegation one final time in the chamber that had once echoed with debate but now hummed with unified intent. She spoke not as a human commander but as a representative of a new alliance, reminding them that history would remember not just what they discovered, but how they chose to face the unknown as equals, as partners, not as conquerors. The launch sequence initiated, and the Hyperion shifted into position, engines humming with resonance from systems that had never existed. Together before Vexa felt a surge of anticipation, not fear, as the countdown reached 0 and the gate pulsed with light, folding the ship into an impossible corridor of space-time. In that moment, she realized that the true journey was not about reaching another galaxy or unlocking ancient mysteries. It was about proving that such a journey could only happen when different peoples dared to imagine it together. The Hyperion emerged seconds later in a region of space unlike any they had seen before. Nebulae glowed in impossible hues. Strange geometries lingered in the distance and far ahead. Another gate waited quiet and unpowered, yet somehow expectant. They had taken the first step into something vast, but already they could feel the weight of what they carried, not just technology, not just survival, but the hopes of a new chapter, built on choice, not chance. Vexa turned to Chen, who was already analyzing the incoming data, eyes alive with curiosity and resolve. "This is not the end," she said. "It is only the threshold." Chen nodded. "The universe is no longer a frontier to be feared. It is a canvas waiting to be explored, and now, for the first time, we have the right tools and the right mindset to paint something meaningful together." And as they looked ahead into the unknown, they saw not darkness but direction, not threat but potential, not barriers but bridges. And that perhaps was the lesson that transcended stars and species. In a galaxy once divided by mistrust and isolation, a single act of understanding had rewritten everything. The story of the Hyperion was no longer just about power or survival. It was about perspective in our own world. We are often faced with conflict, uncertainty, and division. We build walls between nations, ideas, and beliefs, believing that strength lies in separation. Yet the lesson of the Hyperion shows something different, that true strength comes not from having the might to destroy, but from having the courage to unite, to listen, to learn, and to build a future. Not alone, but together in our fractured reality. We may not have ancient gates or interstellar fleets, but we do have the power to choose our response to the unknown. And like the Hyperion, if we choose collaboration over conquest, adaptability over arrogance, and vision over fear, we too may find that the most important discoveries lie not in the stars, but in how we choose to reach them together.